Well, at the top of the show, I mentioned how I now think Anthony Albanese seems far too worried about his critics. Now, right or wrong, rather than, I think, acting like a strong leader of an island nation that, let's be frank, here depends on its strongest ally, the US, to defend itself. Now, it seems we have entered this pretend world where we can side with everybody but the United States because it's led by Donald Trump. Now, thankfully, Trump wouldn't know this as he's been a little bit busy lately, but with people like the Prime Minister and with Penny Wong running foreign policy, you've got to ask yourself this. Is this a clever way to go? And I don't think it is. Now, some critics are now asking whether Australia is the United States' forgotten ally after it emerged that Canberra was left out of the loop on the weekend. I'd say the reverse. The US is the Australian government's forgotten ally. There is clearly, among many Labor ministers and advisers, an anti-Trump dislike that is distorting their thinking. Joined now by my panel, Sky News contributor Louise Roberts and Adoni Media's Lisa Goddard. Louise, Labor used as a weapon, you might remember, during the election campaign. I hate to take you back to the election campaign because it was so dreary, but the idea that the coalition was somehow too close to Donald Trump. I mean, you remember Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price was absolutely attacked by the government and the media for simply saying, let's make Australia great again. Given that decisive action taken at the weekend, wouldn't we rather be close than left out?
100%. I mean, I think what we're seeing now, Steve, is the result of Labor's political posturing when Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong have put so much energy into distancing themselves from Donald Trump rather than putting the energy into building a relationship with our strongest ally. And you make a very good point about what they said about Jacinta Price when she dared to say, let's make Australia great again. And instead of focusing on cost of living, Labor put so much energy in their election campaign in attacking Peter Dutton as, Trump light. So I think what we see here is we've sidelined ourselves. We've become in a situation where we're not even considered as part of this discussion as maybe the G7 leaders were. So I think Mr Albanese and Penny Wong need to really, really, really reconsider where we stand with the US and do something to fix it.
Yeah, Louise is right. I mean, wouldn't it have been so much better on Saturday morning or Saturday lunchtime if we'd whacked on Sky and you had Prime Minister Albanese saying, well, I had a call from the US President overnight. He told me what he was going to do in Iran. He brought us into the whole operation. I, as an Australian, would have felt much better about it.
But Steve, you would have watched that on the weekend, and I was watching the clock tick by and thinking, where is our Prime Minister? He just wasn't out there saying anything. The fact that it was more than 24 hours before we heard from him says enough in itself. Silence is very loud on days like that. And Louise is right. He absolutely has done nothing to ingratiate himself to the US President at all. And at this point, he appears on the world stage to be completely irrelevant. And the one thing Albanese doesn't like is to be ridiculed. Every time he is asked some tough questions, and we saw that on the weekend, he seems to take it as some sort of personal insult. And we've watched this over his last term as well. He very much manages those press conferences. If you read Greg Sheridan this morning, he was saying that basically there's a rule that you can ask a question, but there are no follow-up questions. He doesn't seem to want to be held to scrutiny. And the fact today that he was saying that, and I'll quote you, we've agreed, him and Trump, or him and the White House, that we will have a meeting and that will take place at a time that is convenient to both of us. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty convinced no one in the White House is sitting around wondering about Anthony Albanese's diary.
No, and Louise, he seems to have a glass jaw. I mean, that chat he had today with Kieran Gilbert, Kieran put the strong questions to him, but he kept sort of saying, oh, well, there's some people in the media who, no matter what I do, they're not going to like what I do, and, they're out of touch. I mean, why is he so... I don't know what the word is. Why is he so worried about what people say about him? If he's like that, he shouldn't be in the job.
We compare him to someone like Trump, who is a bona fide world leader, I would argue, who is decisive. He makes up his mind, he takes action, it's effective, and he stands by the action. He doesn't equivocate or sort of panic that maybe someone may not like him or he'll be dropped off someone's Christmas card list or something like that. He really shows what it's like to have an iron will and actually put your country's interests first. And we haven't seen that from Mr Albanese when it comes to our relationship with the US.
Lisa, just on the Australians that are in Iran and Israel, this question often comes up when you have a global conflict that breaks out suddenly and people can't get out. My old mate Ross Greenwood from Sky Business News is stuck in Doha tonight. He's sitting there waiting for another 9 hours to get a flight for some reason to Adelaide, but he can't get out either because of the problems. We've got 3,000 people in Iran who want to come back to Australia and 1,000 in Israel. How much should it be the job of the government to get you home if you've gone there by choice?
Well, you're right, and we hear this even when there's a natural disaster. There's always that pressure on the government to try to get people back. And look, I'm sure if you were in that situation, it's extremely frustrating that you're at the other end of the line to some bureaucrat who isn't necessarily being helpful. What I find interesting about this is within the first sort of 24 to 48 hours of the Middle East going basically to hell in a handbag, if you want to have a really blunt description of it, there were Australians that I know of who were in Israel, and they managed to use the private sector to get out of Israel. Now, if the private sector can transition people out of Israel, what is the Australian government doing? I understand it's dangerous, I understand the risk, I understand there's a lot of people, but the private sector were able to somehow reach in there and extract these Australians. What is our government doing?
Yeah, I know people who got out that way. I mean, somehow they either got on a bus or they got their own private transport. They went over the border into Jordan. They managed, while Jordan airspace was open, to get on a plane and get to somewhere like Doha or to get back to Australia. You're right. I mean, people did get out. Let's talk about Vladimir Putin. He's weighed in on all of this. The Russian president, he's met with Iran's foreign minister. That happened yesterday following President Trump's announcement of the bombing of the facilities. Putin condemned the attacks on Iran, but stopped short of offering full support to its ally. Now, Louise, what do you make of that? I think that says something about the behind-the-scenes relationship between Trump and Putin that is not often talked about.
Yes, I wondered that myself, Steve, because Putin stopped short of actually offering troops on the ground or any kind of military action to support Iran, didn't he? Which I thought was very interesting. Although obviously Russia and Iran are sort of partners in destabilising the Middle East, it was interesting that he kept his powder dry in that way, and no doubt that they had a few shots of vodka while they're having a chat, and it's all about the optics as well. So Trump knows that these two have met and had a meeting and have done something to sort of solidify their relationship. But I also found it quite ironic that Putin would say Trump's action would cause sort of a nuclear war or nuclear disaster, when this is a man who obviously invaded the Ukraine, who arms Iran and, makes threats about nuclear weapons at any opportunity against the West. So I did find his comments a bit hypocritical, to say the least. But yeah, there's no doubt his relationship with Iran is strong, but for whatever reason, as you say, there's obviously some back-channeling going on with Trump as well.
Louise, Lisa, great to catch up with you. Thank you very much. We'll catch you next week.